Everyone assumes they can spot the smartest person in the room, but they're looking in the wrong direction. They're watching whoever's talking the most, whoever sounds the most confident, whoever has the quickest answers. Meanwhile, the person with the highest IQ in that room probably hasn't said a word yet. Today we're breaking down 7 rare psychological patterns of extremely high intelligence. Not the traits people celebrate, the ones they accidentally punish. Here's the first one, and it tends to throw people off. People with exceptionally high intelligence ask questions that sound almost embarrassingly simple. You're in a discussion, maybe a work meeting, maybe a group debate over dinner. Everyone's stacking ideas, building momentum, referencing things they half remember from an article they skimmed. It feels productive. It feels like the group is getting somewhere. And then one person goes, "Wait, what exactly are we trying to solve here?" The room stalls. Because in that single sentence, they just exposed the fact that nobody actually defined the problem. 10 minutes of confident conversation built on an assumption nobody thought to check. It's like watching a group enthusiastically assemble furniture for 20 minutes before someone quietly asks, "Are we sure we opened the right box?" And here's the thing, that question didn't come from confusion. It came from a mind that refuses to build anything on a foundation it hasn't tested first. While everyone else is racing to sound insightful, they're quietly pressing on the floor to see if it holds. That's why their questions sound so basic. What do we actually mean by that? How are we sure this is true? What are we taking for granted? These aren't beginner questions. They're the questions most people are too busy performing to ask. And if you've ever been the person who raised one of those questions and watched the room go silent, you already know how that feels. Not powerful, just oddly alone in noticing what everyone else skipped. Here's another pattern that tends to confuse people. People with extremely high intelligence experience a delay between feeling and reacting. Most people operate in real time. Something happens, they feel it, they express it. It's instant. Someone says something hurtful in a conversation, and they fire back immediately. A stressful moment hits, and their emotions are right there on the surface. But people with very high cognitive ability have this strange gap between the stimulus and the response. They feel the emotion, it registers, but instead of going straight to their mouth, it gets rerouted. Their brain automatically sends it through analysis first. What did they actually mean by that? Is my reaction proportional to what just happened? What am I missing here? This is why they can seem eerily calm during arguments, why they don't snap back when someone challenges them, why in a crisis, they're the person everyone looks at because they appear completely composed. But here's what nobody sees. They're not calm. They're buffering. The emotion is fully there. It's just being processed on a different timeline. You've probably experienced this yourself. Something happens, a confrontation, a disappointment, someone says something that doesn't sit right, and in the moment, you feel almost nothing. You handle it. You respond rationally. Everyone thinks you're fine. And then 3 days later, you're in the shower, and it hits you like a truck. The full emotional weight of what happened finally arrives, and now you're having the reaction you were supposed to have on Tuesday. People around you would be confused if they saw it. Why are you upset about that now? That was days ago. But your brain wasn't ignoring it. It was processing it, quietly, methodically, in the background, like a program running behind every other tab. And when it finally finished, it delivered the result. Psychologists describe this as a longer neural pathway between the emotional centers and the prefrontal cortex. The feeling doesn't skip processing. It travels through it, and that journey takes time. The cost is that people often misread you. They think you don't care. They think you're cold or detached. They might even think nothing affects you, when the reality is everything affects you. It just reaches you on a delay, and by the time it arrives, you're alone with it. This next pattern gets misread constantly. In group settings, highly intelligent people tend to watch far more than they participate. They're tracking things most people don't even register. Who shifted their posture when that topic came up? Whose agreement came a little too fast? Whose energy changed the moment someone else started talking? They're reading the room at a level that's almost forensic, and they're doing it without trying. Their attention just works differently. Instead of preparing what to say next, they're absorbing the full picture, the power dynamics, the emotional undercurrents, the things people reveal without realizing it. And then later someone asks, "You were so quiet tonight, everything okay?" And what you want to say is, "I'm fine, I just noticed your friend Sarah is upset about something she's not saying. The couple by the window definitely argued before they got here, and the host is stressed but performing like everything's perfect." But instead you just say, "Yeah, I'm good, just tired." Because explaining what your brain actually does at a social gathering would take longer than the gathering itself. This is why they speak less but land harder when they finally do. They've been collecting data the entire time everyone else was performing. But here's the part that actually hurts. In most social environments, silence gets punished. People assume you're disengaged or that you have nothing valuable to contribute. And if you've lived this, if you've been the quiet one who sees everything but gets overlooked because you didn't fight for airtime, you know exactly how exhausting it is to be deeply present in a room that thinks you're absent. And maybe that's the quiet cost nobody talks about. You see more than most people ever will, but the more you see, the less people see you. Here's one that operates almost like a sixth sense. People with extremely high intelligence have what you might call a contradiction radar. Their brain is constantly cross-referencing incoming information against everything they already know. And when something doesn't align, they feel it immediately. Someone makes a broad statement. Most people nod. It sounds reasonable. It matches the mood of the room. But in a highly analytical mind, a quiet alarm fires. That conflicts with something I encountered in a completely different context. That logic falls apart if you apply it anywhere outside this specific situation. You've probably experienced this watching a documentary. Everyone else is enjoying the story. You're stuck 4 scenes behind because your brain is doing forensic analysis on a timeline that doesn't add up. Your friend's looking at you like, "Why aren't you reacting to this?" Because your brain hasn't cleared the last inconsistency yet, and it's not moving on until it does. Or someone confidently drops a statistic at dinner, and your brain is already running the numbers on whether that's even mathematically possible. You don't say anything, but you're definitely Googling it at home later, probably before you even take your shoes off. They're not doing this to argue. Most of the time, they don't even bring it up. But internally, they cannot let the inconsistency pass. It's like hearing a note played slightly out of key. Once you catch it, you can't unhear it. And that's the part nobody warns you about. When your mind works this way, you can't just enjoy a conversation the way other people do. You're always auditing, always testing, always running every claim through a filter you didn't ask for and can't turn off. It makes you sharper, yes, but it also makes you tired in ways that are hard to explain to someone whose brain lets things slide. Now, this next one, you've probably experienced it without realizing what you were seeing. You ask someone a question, something straightforward, and instead of answering immediately, they go quiet. Not confused quiet, more like their eyes shift and you can feel something happening behind them. A few seconds pass. Maybe someone even says, "Hello, still with us?" And then they respond, and the answer has this depth to it you weren't expecting. What happened in that silence is remarkable. Their brain wasn't stalling. It was running scenarios, testing different framings simultaneously and tracing each one forward to see where it leads. If I say it this way, it could be misunderstood. If I go with this angle, it opens a follow-up I'm not prepared for. If this assumption underneath is wrong, the whole thing collapses. You know exactly what this looks like in everyday life. You spend 20 minutes writing a 2-line email because your brain has already predicted 4 ways it could be misread. Type it, delete it, retype it, read it from their perspective, change 1 word, stare at it. Meanwhile, the person next to you is firing off replies like they're speedrunning their inbox. Most people react to the surface of a conversation. People with extremely high intelligence are already 3 moves ahead, mapping consequences nobody else has considered yet. And that's why they sometimes appear slower. They're not thinking less, they're thinking in dimensions most people don't access. The cost is looking hesitant in a world that mistakes speed for competence. Connected to that is something most people find deeply uncomfortable. Highly intelligent people are unusually willing to abandon positions they once held. Most people treat opinions like territory. You planted your flag, you defended it, and walking it back feels like surrender. But for a mind whose primary loyalty is to what's accurate rather than what's familiar, a belief is just a working model. It holds until something better arrives. When stronger evidence shows up, they don't dig in, they revise, quietly, without performance, without announcement. And sometimes that means going back to someone 2 weeks later and saying, "Actually, I've been thinking about what we talked about, and I think I was wrong." And they look at you like, "Why are you still thinking about that?" Because for them, it was a Tuesday conversation. For you, it was an open case file your brain refused to close until it reached a better conclusion. To people watching from the outside, this can look like they don't really stand for anything. But what's actually happening is far more demanding than holding a position. They're choosing to be wrong today so they can be less wrong tomorrow. And in a culture that treats certainty like a virtue, that willingness to update, to evolve, to say, "I thought differently about this last week, and here's why I changed," that takes a kind of courage most people never develop because they never had to. And the last pattern ties everything together. People with extremely high IQs have a quiet, persistent resistance to consensus. Not because they enjoy being the outlier. Most of them actually find conflict draining. But their brain does this thing automatically, where every time a group starts moving toward agreement, a small internal checkpoint fires. Is this actually true? Or does it just feel true because nobody's pushing back? That distinction matters more than most people realize. Because group agreement and accuracy are not the same thing. History is full of rooms where everyone agreed and everyone was wrong. You've probably felt this in a group chat or a friend circle. Everyone aligns on something, a restaurant pick, a decision at work, a take on something in the news, and you feel that friction. You know if you speak up, you become the difficult one. So sometimes you let it go, but it sits with you, not because you needed to be right, but because agreeing with something you don't actually believe feels physically uncomfortable, like wearing a shirt that's one size too small. You can do it, but you're aware of it the entire time. They don't always disagree. Sometimes they run their own analysis and land in exactly the same place as everyone else. But the difference is, they got there on their own terms, through their own reasoning, not because the current of the room carried them. And in those moments where their conclusion breaks from the group, where they're the only one seeing it differently, that's where it gets heavy. Because standing apart from consensus in real time, surrounded by people who've already made up their minds, requires something most people seriously underestimate. It requires being comfortable with the possibility that everyone you respect thinks you're wrong, and sitting with that, and not folding. So the next time someone mistakes your silence for having nothing to say, just know, the loudest rooms rarely hold the deepest thinking. You're not slow, you're not difficult. You just never needed the room to know what your mind was doing. And honestly, that might be the most intelligent thing of all. Because the sharpest minds don't fight for attention. They outgrow the need for it. If you see yourself in these patterns, drop it in the comments. And if you want to go deeper into psychology most people never examine about themselves, the next video is going to shift something. You'll see what I mean.